I'm standing in front of a stranger's house at 2 a.m., my hand frozen inches from the doorbell. 25 years. That's how long I've been living a lie. The woman inside this house doesn't know I exist. She doesn't know that her daughter, the one she's been mourning is dead for a quarter century, is standing on her porch, shaking so hard the DNA test results are rustling in my hands like autumn leaves. My father told me she abandoned us. He told me she was a drug addict who chose her next fix over her own child. He told me she died when I was 7, and I cried at a funeral for a woman who was very much alive, probably wondering where her baby girl went. But here's the thing about lies. They're like cracks in a foundation. You can paint over them, renovate the whole house, convince yourself everything is stable. But one day, one tiny earthquake, and the whole structure comes crashing down. My earthquake came in the form of a heritage DNA test I took on a whim last Christmas. Let me back up. My name is Sophie. At least, that's what I've been called for 30 years. I'm a high school English teacher in Portland, Oregon. I have a rescue cat named Hemingway, a tiny apartment that smells perpetually of coffee and old books, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I was the girl whose mother left. The girl whose father had to raise her alone, despite the financial strain and emotional burden. The girl who grew up feeling like she owed her existence to a man who constantly reminded her what he'd sacrificed. I was the girl who always felt like something was missing, like I was walking around with a phantom limb I couldn't quite name. I was wrong about all of it. The earliest memory I have isn't really a memory at all. It's more like a feeling. The sensation of being carried through the dark, my small face pressed against a shoulder that smelled like cigarettes and desperation. I remember lights flashing by through a car window, the hypnotic rhythm of highway reflectors. I remember crying, calling out for someone, and a man's voice saying, "Shoo, baby. We're going on an adventure." I was 5 years old. For years, I thought this was just a dream. A weird, recurring nightmare that made no sense. My father, the man I called Dad, would brush it off whenever I mentioned it. "Kids have wild imaginations," he'd say, ruffling my hair. "You probably saw it in a movie." But it wasn't a movie. It was real. And that adventure was the night Thomas Carver kidnapped his own daughter and disappeared across state lines. Growing up with Dad was complicated. He wasn't abusive in the traditional sense. He never hit me. Never screamed. But there was always this undercurrent of control, like invisible wires pulling me in the direction he wanted me to go. He homeschooled me until I was 12, claiming the public schools were indoctrination centers. We moved every few years, Tennessee, Georgia, Missouri, finally Oregon, always some vague excuse about job opportunities or fresh starts. I wasn't allowed to have social media until I was 18, and even then, he monitored everything. No Facebook, no Instagram, just a carefully curated email account he had the password to. He said it was for my protection, that the internet was full of predators and perverts. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father. My only family. "It's us against the world, Sophie," he'd say, usually while we were packing up another apartment in the middle of the night. "We're a team. A unit. We don't need anyone else." I nodded. I smiled. I helped pack. And somewhere deep inside, in a place I didn't have words for, I felt the weight of that lie pressing down on my chest like a stone. The funeral happened on a gray Tuesday in November. I was 7 years old, wearing a black dress that was too big for me, standing in front of a closed casket at a funeral home in Atlanta. The casket was white. I remember that detail vividly, white with gold handles, like something a princess might be buried in. "Your mother is in there," Dad told me, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "She's finally at peace." There were maybe 10 people at the service. I didn't recognize any of them. Dad said they were old family friends, but they didn't talk to me, didn't offer condolences or share memories. They just stood there, uncomfortable, like extras in a play who'd forgotten their lines. The pastor spoke about addiction and the tragic waste of a young life. He never mentioned her name, not once. I found that strange even then, but I was 7 and drowning in grief too big for my small body to contain. I cried. I cried so hard I threw up in the bathroom, and Dad held my hair back, whispering that it was okay, that she was in a better place, that we'd be okay, just the two of us. I never questioned it. Not really. How do you question a funeral? How do you doubt a closed casket and a pastor's solemn words? You don't. You just accept it, because the alternative is too horrifying to consider. 23 years later, I would find out that funeral was a lie. Every word of it. The casket was empty. The mourners were paid actors, $60 each, according to the receipt I found hidden in Dad's storage unit. Even the pastor was fake, some friend of my father's who'd agreed to play the part. My mother didn't die when I was 7. She spent those 23 years searching for me. College was my escape. University of Portland, full scholarship for English literature. Dad fought it at first, said I should stay home, take online courses, that the world was dangerous for young women. But I'd turned 18, and for the first time in my life, I had access to my own birth certificate, my own documents. I could make my own choices. The birth certificate should have been my first clue, but I was too naive to see it. Sophie and Carver, born April 12, 1995, in Knoxville, Tennessee. Mother, deceased. Father, Thomas James Carver. Why did it say deceased if she supposedly died when I was 7? Why not just leave it blank or list her name? But I didn't question it. I just accepted it, the way I'd accepted everything else in my carefully constructed world. College gave me freedom, but it also gave me something more dangerous, perspective. I made friends who had normal relationships with their parents. They'd text their moms about boyfriend drama or call their dads for car advice. They'd go home for Thanksgiving and come back with stories about annoying siblings and embarrassing family traditions. I had none of that. My life before 18 was a blank slate, and the life after was walking on eggshells, always waiting for Dad to call, to check in, to remind me that I was all he had. "How's my girl?" he'd ask every Sunday evening, exactly at 7 p.m. "Good, Dad. Busy with midterms." "You're not getting mixed up with the wrong crowd, are you?" "Those college kids, they do drugs, Sophie. Just like your mother." Every conversation circled back to her. The mother who abandoned me. The addict. The cautionary tale. He'd weave her into every warning, every piece of advice, until she became less of a person and more of a ghost story told to keep children in line. I graduated summa cum laude, got my teaching certification, found my apartment, adopted Hemingway. I built a life. A good life. A normal life. But normal is exhausting when you're constantly pretending. Last year, Dad had a stroke. Not a massive one, but enough to land him in the hospital for 3 weeks and then in a rehabilitation facility in Beaverton. I visited every day after work, brought him magazines and crossword puzzles, sat by his bed while he dozed off during Wheel of Fortune. He was 72, suddenly fragile, suddenly mortal. The man who'd been this towering presence my entire life was now just an old man in a hospital gown, struggling to remember words, his left side weak and uncooperative. "Sophie," he said one evening, his speech slurred from the stroke. "I need to tell you something." I leaned closer. "What is it, Dad?" He looked at me, his eyes swimming with something I couldn't identify. Guilt? Fear? Regret? I wasn't always a good man. Don't talk like that. You raised me. You did your best. No. He shook his head, agitated. You don't understand. But then a nurse came in to check his vitals, and the moment passed. He never brought it up again. 2 days later, he was transferred to a long-term care facility, his condition stabilized but his memory spotty, his personality dulled by medication and brain damage. I thought about that conversation for weeks. What had he been trying to tell me? What confession had been sitting on his tongue, waiting to poison us both? I didn't know that I'd find out 3 months later, on a boring Saturday in December, when I decided to finally do one of those ancestry DNA tests. My best friend Maya had been bugging me about the DNA test for months. She'd done hers the previous summer and discovered she was 23% Scandinavian, which explained nothing about her life but gave her an excuse to start watching Viking documentaries and making elaborate braids. Come on, she'd said over wine at my apartment. Don't you want to know where you come from? Your dad never talks about his family. You could have cousins out there. A whole genetic history. I'd resisted. Partly because it felt like a betrayal of Dad, lying in his care facility bed, barely remembering what he'd eaten for breakfast. Partly because some instinct I couldn't name whispered that maybe I didn't want to know. But it was Christmas break, I was bored, and the kit was on sale. $99 for answers to questions I didn't know I had. I spit in the tube, sealed it up, and mailed it off on December 18th. The website said results would take 6 to 8 weeks. I forgot about it, went back to grading essays and planning spring semester lessons, visited Dad twice a week, lived my small, careful life. The email arrived on February 3rd, a Tuesday. I was sitting at my kitchen table, Hemingway purring in my lap, drinking my third coffee of the morning because my students had decided Macbeth was boring and old and I was questioning all my life choices. Your ancestry DNA results are ready. I clicked the link, expecting to see percentages and maps, maybe a pie chart of European heritage that would tell me I was Irish or German or whatever white people discover they are when they do these tests. Instead, I saw a list of DNA matches. First match, parent/child relationship. Elizabeth Hoffman. Confidence, extremely high. Shared DNA, 3,478 cm. I stared at the screen. Read it again. Then again. Parent/child relationship. Elizabeth Hoffman. Not Thomas Carver. Not father, listed on birth certificate. Elizabeth Hoffman. My hand started shaking so hard I almost dropped my coffee mug. Hemingway jumped off my lap, offended by the sudden movement. I couldn't breathe. The apartment was too hot, too small, the walls pressing in like a trash compactor. This had to be a mistake. A glitch in the system. The test had gotten contaminated or mixed up with someone else's sample. I'd read about that happening, false matches, lab errors. I clicked on Elizabeth Hoffman's profile with trembling fingers. Age, 56. Location, Asheville, North Carolina. Member since March 2019. There was a photo. A woman with dark blonde hair cut short, laugh lines around her eyes, wearing a blue sweater and standing in front of a mountain vista. She looked happy. Whole. Normal. She looked like me. Not exactly, she was older, heavier, her features softened by time. But the eyes were the same. That specific shade of hazel that shifts between green and brown depending on the light. The slightly crooked smile. The way her left eyebrow arched higher than her right. I'd looked in the mirror my entire life and seen a face I couldn't quite connect to my father's. Dad had brown eyes, a square jaw, a completely different bone structure. You look like your mother, he'd always said, usually with a bitter edge to his voice. He wasn't lying about that part. I clicked the message button before I could think better of it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to a stranger who the algorithm insists is your mother? What do you say to a ghost who's supposed to be dead? I typed, "Hi. I think there might be a mistake with my results. Can we talk?" I hit send. Then I ran to the bathroom and threw up. She responded within an hour. "There's no mistake. I've been looking for you for 25 years. Is this really you? Is this really Emma?" Emma. That name hit me like a physical blow. I sat on my bathroom floor, my back against the cold tile, reading that message over and over until the words started to blur. Emma. Not Sophie. Emma. I typed back, my vision swimming, "My name is Sophie. I don't know who Emma is." The 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing. Stopping. Typing again. Finally. Emma Rose Hoffman. Born April 12, 1995, in Knoxville, Tennessee. Disappeared June 8, 2000. You were 5 years old. Your father, my ex-husband, took you during his supervised visitation. I've been searching ever since. The police gave up years ago, but I never did. I've been submitting my DNA to every database, hoping, praying. Is this really you? The bathroom tilted. I couldn't get enough air. The fluorescent light was too bright, too harsh, exposing every crack in the foundation of my life. I'd been kidnapped. My entire existence was a lie. The woman who was supposed to be dead was alive, typing messages to me from North Carolina, calling me by a name I'd never heard. I called Maya. She answered on the second ring. "I need you to come over. Right now." I think, my voice cracked. I think my whole life is a lie. She was at my apartment in 15 minutes. Maya is the kind of friend who doesn't ask questions until after she's already made tea and wrapped you in a blanket. She sat next to me on my couch, her arm around my shoulders, while I showed her the messages, the DNA results, the photo of Elizabeth Hoffman who might be my mother. "Oh my God," Maya whispered. "Oh my God, Sophie. She says my name is Emma. What are you going to do?" I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. The walls of my apartment, my safe space, my carefully constructed adult life, felt like a stage set, something that could be dismantled and packed away at any moment. "I need proof," I finally said. "I need more than a DNA test and a message from a stranger." "She's not a stranger. She's your mother. My mother is dead. I went to her funeral." "Sophie." "I went to her funeral, Maya. I saw the casket. I cried. It was real." But even as I said it, I could feel the lie unraveling. The strange funeral with no name mentioned, the mourners who didn't speak to me, the closed casket. The way Dad had always deflected questions about Mom's family, her friends, her life before me. "We need to find out the truth," Maya said firmly. "Real, concrete evidence. Does your dad have any documents? Old papers, photos?" He did. A storage unit in Hillsborough that I'd been paying for since his stroke, full of boxes I'd never gone through. He'd always been weirdly secretive about it, had changed the code multiple times over the years, but after the stroke, I was his emergency contact, his power of attorney. I had access to everything. "The storage unit," I said. "He has a storage unit." Maya nodded. "Then that's where we start." The storage facility was one of those depressing orange buildings off Highway 26, surrounded by chain-link fence and bathed in the sickly glow of sodium lights. We went after dark, though I'm not sure why. Maybe because what we were about to do felt illicit, like breaking into someone's mind without permission. Unit 237. I punched in the code, his birthday, predictable, and the lock clicked open. The smell hit me first. Dust and old paper and something else, something chemical and stale. Maya found the light switch, and a single bare bulb flickered to life, illuminating a space roughly the size of my bedroom, packed floor to ceiling with cardboard boxes, plastic bins, and old furniture. Jesus, Maya muttered. This is going to take all night. We started pulling boxes down, going through them systematically. Most of it was junk, old tax documents, yellowing newspapers, books about conspiracy theories and survivalist nonsense. Dad's paranoia, immortalized in cardboard. Then, in a box marked personal, do not touch, buried under a stack of old bank statements, I found it. A manila folder. Unlabeled. Inside were newspaper clippings, all from the same week in June 2000. Knoxville News Sentinel. 5-year-old girl missing after failed custody handoff. There was a photo, a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, wearing a Winnie the Pooh t-shirt. Emma Rose Hoffman. Me. Authorities are searching for Emma Rose Hoffman, who disappeared Sunday afternoon after her father, Thomas Carver, failed to return her to her mother following a court-ordered supervised visit. Carver, 47, lost primary custody after a domestic violence incident in 1999 and was granted only supervised visitation rights. He is believed to be driving a 1992 Dodge Caravan and should be considered dangerous. The article continued, but I couldn't read any more. The newspaper was shaking in my hands, the words blurring together. Maya took the folder from me gently. She pulled out more clippings, each one chronicling the search. Mother pleads for daughter's safe return. Missing girl case goes cold. And then, from 2003, Elizabeth Hoffman continues search for daughter 3 years after disappearance. There were photos of my mother, my real mother, looking younger, haunted, holding my missing person poster at candlelight vigils. In one photo, she was standing next to an age progression image of what I might look like at age 8, at age 10, at age 13. Those images looked like me. Like I'd looked at those ages. I'd been right there, living under a different name, and she'd been searching. Always searching. At the bottom of the folder was something else. A social security card. Not mine, not Sophie and Carver's. A blank one, the kind you can buy online or at sketchy copy shops. Next to it, a birth certificate that looked official but felt wrong somehow, the paper too new, the seal slightly smudged. He forged her identity, Maya said quietly. He created a whole new person. Sophie and Carver, I whispered. She never existed. No. But Emma Rose Hoffman did. And she still does. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with Hemingway in my lap, scrolling through everything I could find about Elizabeth Hoffman online. It wasn't much, she wasn't on social media, probably for the same reasons Dad had kept me off it. Privacy. Protection. Fear. But I found a few things. An article from a local Asheville paper from 2015, about a support group she'd started for parents of missing children. A quote, "You never stop looking. You never stop hoping. Even when everyone tells you to move on, you can't. Because somewhere out there, your child is living their life, and you're not part of it. That's a wound that never heals." I found her address through a public records search. 847 Maple Grove Road, Asheville, North Carolina. A small house, according to Google Street View, with blue shutters and a garden in front. I found a phone number. At 3 a.m., sitting in my dark apartment, I almost called. My finger hovered over the number. What would I say? "Hi, I'm the daughter you lost 25 years ago. Sorry I didn't call sooner, but I thought you were dead." I couldn't do it. Not yet. Not until I had more answers. At dawn, I drove to the care facility where Dad was living. The Valley View Care Center always smelled like antiseptic and overcooked vegetables. I signed in at the front desk, the receptionist giving me her usual sympathetic smile. "Your dad is so lucky to have such a devoted daughter," and I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. Dad was in the common room, parked in his wheelchair by the window, staring blankly at a muted television showing the morning news. The stroke had aged him a decade. His hair was completely white now, his shoulders hunched, his hands trembling slightly from the medication. I pulled up a chair next to him. "Hey, Dad." He turned to me slowly, his eyes taking a moment to focus. "Sophie. You're early. We need to talk." Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Fear. Then it was gone, replaced by the vague confusion that was his default now. "Talk about what, honey?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo of Elizabeth Hoffman. "Tell me about her." His face went pale. Even through the fog of his damaged brain, even through the medication and the stroke-induced amnesia, he knew. He recognized her. I don't. Her name is Elizabeth Hoffman. She says she's my mother. She says you kidnapped me 25 years ago. That's not. You don't understand. Then make me understand. I was surprised by how calm my voice was. How steady. Inside, I was screaming, but outside, I was ice. I found the newspaper clippings, Dad. I found the forged documents. I know my name isn't Sophie. So tell me the truth. For once in my life, tell me the truth. He looked at me for a long moment, tears pooling in his rheumy eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. She was going to take you away from me. She had custody. The court gave her custody. She turned them against me. His voice rose, suddenly sharp, the old anger breaking through. She told them lies. Said I hit her. Said I was dangerous. It was all lies, Sophie, Emma, whatever. She poisoned everyone against me, and they were going to give her everything. My daughter. My only child. They were going to let me see you for 2 hours a week, supervised, like I was some kind of criminal. You were a criminal. You kidnapped me. I saved you. He grabbed my arm with surprising strength, his fingers digging into my wrist. I saved you from her. She was going to destroy you, fill your head with her feminist bullshit, turn you against me. I did what I had to do. A father protects his child. I pulled my arm away. You stole my life. I gave you a life. A good life. I raised you, educated you, kept you safe. What did she do? Nothing. She gave up. She stopped looking. She never stopped looking, I said quietly. She's been searching for 25 years. She submitted her DNA to every database. She started support groups for parents of missing children. She never gave up. He slumped back in his wheelchair, the fight draining out of him. It doesn't matter now. It's done. You're 30 years old. What are you going to do, go back to her? Pretend the last 25 years didn't happen? You're my daughter, Sophie. Mine. Not hers. My name is Emma. Your name is whatever I say it is. I'm your father. You're not my father, I said, standing up. You're the man who kidnapped me. There's a difference. I walked out before he could respond, my legs somehow carrying me down the hallway, past the sympathetic receptionist, into the parking lot where I collapsed against my car and finally let myself cry. Maya went with me to the police station. I didn't trust myself to do it alone, to tell the story without breaking down or talking myself out of it. The detective who took my statement was a woman in her 40s named Sarah Chen. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that I found oddly comforting. So you're telling me you're Emma Rose Hoffman, she said, after I'd explained everything. The girl who went missing in 2000. Yes. And you have DNA evidence? I showed her the ancestry DNA results, the newspaper clippings, the forged documents from the storage unit. She examined everything carefully, taking notes, occasionally asking questions. This is significant, she finally said. Emma Hoffman's case is still technically open. It's a cold case, but it's open. If what you're saying is true, and based on this evidence, I believe it is, then Thomas Carver committed parental kidnapping, custodial interference, identity fraud, and probably a dozen other crimes. What happens now? Now we verify. We'll need an official DNA test, not just the commercial one. We'll need to contact the Knoxville Police Department and the FBI. This crosses state lines, so it's a federal case. And we'll need to contact Elizabeth Hoffman. My stomach dropped. You're going to tell her? Just tell her? Detective Chen looked at me with something like compassion. She's been waiting 25 years for this phone call. Yes, we're going to tell her. Unless you don't want us to? Did I want them to? I didn't know. Part of me wanted to run, to pretend I'd never taken that DNA test, to go back to my simple life as Sophie the English teacher. But that life was a lie. It had always been a lie. Tell her, I said. But, can I be the one to meet her? Before everything becomes official and legal and complicated? Detective Chen hesitated. That's irregular. Please. She's waited 25 years. Let me give her this. Let me give us both this. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll contact her, explain the situation. What happens next is up to you. The phone call came 3 days later. I was in the middle of teaching The Great Gatsby to a classroom of disinterested sophomores when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, continued my lecture about the green light and impossible dreams, about how we're all reaching for something we can never quite grasp. During my planning period, I checked my messages. This is Elizabeth Hoffman. The police contacted me. They said you might be Emma. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to feel. This could be real, or it could be another false lead, another disappointment. But if there's even a chance. Can we meet? Please? I need to see you. I need to know. My number is below. Call me when you're ready. Or don't. I'll understand either way. I love you. I've always loved you. I read the message 17 times. Then I walked out of the school, got in my car, and drove. I didn't tell Maya. I didn't tell anyone. I just drove east on I-84, through the Columbia River Gorge, into Idaho, down through Utah and Colorado, the landscape changing from green to desert to mountains to plains. I drove for 2 days straight, stopping only for gas and terrible truck stop coffee, sleeping in rest areas when exhaustion made the road blur. I drove because I needed time. Time to think. Time to prepare. Time to figure out who the hell I was. Was I Sophie, the careful teacher with the small life and the rescue cat? Or was I Emma, the stolen girl whose mother never stopped looking? Maybe I was both. Maybe I was neither. Maybe identity isn't something that gets chosen for you, but something you have to build yourself, piece by piece, out of the wreckage of what came before. I crossed into North Carolina as the sun was rising on the third day, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. The mountains were beautiful here, ancient and worn smooth by time. I understood why someone would choose to live in this place. Why my mother, my real mother, had stayed here, even after I disappeared. This was home. This was where her daughter was supposed to be. I parked outside 847 Maple Grove Road at 7:32 a.m. And that's how I ended up here. On this porch. At 2 a.m. Because I couldn't bring myself to ring the doorbell during the day, when I might actually have to face this, so I waited in my car, watching the house, watching the lights turn on and off, watching her shadow move behind the curtains. Now it's dark, and quiet, and the whole neighborhood is asleep. Now or never. I press the doorbell. The sound echoes through the house. For a moment, nothing happens. Then I hear footsteps, quick and light, and a voice calling out, "Who is it?" It's... I clear my throat. It's me. It's Emma. the door flies open. And there she is. She's wearing pajamas, flannel pants and an oversized t-shirt that says Asheville Marathon 2018. Her hair is messy, sticking up on one side like she'd been sleeping. She's not wearing makeup, and I can see the lines around her eyes, the gray threading through her blonde hair, the way time has marked her. She's beautiful. She's staring at me like I'm a ghost. Like I'm a miracle. Like I'm something she painted in her mind 1,000 times but never quite got right. Emma? Her voice breaks on my name, my real name. Is it really you? I nod, because I can't speak. My throat is closed, tears streaming down my face, and all I can do is stand there like an idiot while my mother, my actual mother, looks at me with 25 years of grief and hope and love written across her face. She steps forward. Hesitates. Can I hug you? Please. She pulls me into her arms, and it's like coming home to a place I never knew existed. She smells like lavender and tea, and she's shaking, or maybe I'm shaking, or maybe we both are. She's crying, great heaving sobs that shake her whole body, and I'm crying too, and we're just standing there on her porch at 2 a.m., holding each other like we're both drowning and each other is the only life raft. My baby, she keeps saying over and over. My baby. My baby. You came back to me. I'm sorry, I choke out. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. He told me you were dead. I thought you were dead. Shoo, no. Don't apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. You were 5 years old. You were a baby. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. She pulls back, cupping my face in her hands, studying me like she's memorizing every feature. You look just like I imagined. Better. You're so beautiful. You're so grown up. I missed everything. I missed your first day of school, your graduation, your first heartbreak. I missed 25 years. I'm here now. You're here now, she repeats, like she's testing the words, seeing if they'll hold. You're really here. She ushers me inside, into a house that's warm and lived in and full of light. There are bookshelves everywhere, plants hanging in the windows, photos covering every available surface. And on the mantel above the fireplace, I see them, age progression photos of me. The missing posters. A shrine to a daughter who never came home. Until now. We talked until sunrise. She made tea, chamomile with honey, and we sat on her couch, and I told her everything. The funeral that wasn't real. The constant moving. The isolation. Dad's control. The DNA test. Finding the evidence. The moment I realized my entire life was a lie. She listened without interrupting, her hand never leaving mine, tears streaming down her face as I described the life I'd lived without her. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want you to know something, Emma. Your father, Thomas, he wasn't always like that. When we first met, he was charming, funny, attentive. I was young and stupid and thought that jealousy meant love, that possessiveness was the same as devotion. By the time I realized what he really was, I was pregnant with you. She took a shaky breath. The abuse started small. Comments about what I wore, who I talked to. Then it escalated. He'd check my phone, follow me to work, accuse me of cheating if I smiled at another man. When you were born, it got worse. He saw you as his possession, his property. If I disagreed with him about anything, what you ate, what you wore, where you went, he'd rage for hours. He never hit me in front of you, but you heard it. I know you heard it. I don't remember, I said softly. Good. I'm glad. I finally left when you were 4. Got a restraining order, filed for divorce, fought for custody. The court sided with me after he violated the restraining order 3 times. They gave him supervised visitation only, 2 hours a week at a community center. He was furious. He kept saying I'd stolen you from him, that I'd pay for taking his daughter. She paused, looking down at our intertwined hands. The day he took you, it was supposed to be his last supervised visit before the divorce was finalized. The supervisor was a woman named Margaret. She'd been doing it for 6 months, never had any problems. But that day, Thomas was agitated. Kept checking his watch. When Margaret stepped out to use the bathroom, just 2 minutes, she said it was just 2 minutes, he grabbed you and ran. By the time Margaret realized what was happening, you were gone. I remember that, I said suddenly. The memory surfacing like something from underwater. I remember playing with blocks. And then we were running, and I was scared, and he kept saying we were going on an adventure. You were screaming for me. The other kids in the center heard you. Margaret heard you. But by the time anyone could stop him, he'd put you in his van and drove away. I got the call 15 minutes later. The police found the van abandoned in a Walmart parking lot 3 hours away. He'd switched vehicles. Disappeared. How did he do it? How did he hide me for 25 years? He was smart. Paranoid, but smart. He never stayed anywhere long. He homeschooled you, so there was no school enrollment to track. He used fake names, fake documents. He probably paid cash for everything. And the country is bigger than you think, Emma. It's easy to disappear if you know how. If you're willing to burn your whole life down to do it. He burned his life. But he also burned mine. No. She squeezed my hand. He stole 25 years from us. But you're alive, and you're here, and we have the rest of our lives. That's what matters now. Over the next few weeks, my life became a media circus. Once the police officially confirmed my identity, matching my DNA to Elizabeth's, to evidence from the original case, it exploded. Missing girl found after 25 years. Kidnapped daughter returns to mother's arms. How one man created a new identity for his stolen child. Reporters camped outside Elizabeth's house, outside my apartment in Portland, outside the care facility where Dad was still living, oblivious or uncaring about the chaos he'd caused. The school put me on paid leave, citing mental health concerns and media attention. Maya fielded calls from morning shows, podcasts, documentary producers. Everyone wanted the story. Everyone wanted the exclusive. Everyone wanted to know what it felt like to discover you'd been living a lie. I didn't do any interviews. I couldn't. How do you condense 25 years of stolen life into a soundbite? The legal process was complicated. Thomas Carver was charged with parental kidnapping, custodial interference, identity fraud, and violation of a restraining order. Because of his age and medical condition, he'd likely never see trial, but the charges were filed anyway. Justice, even symbolic justice, mattered. My own legal situation was messy. According to the law, I was Emma Rose Hoffman, not Sophie and Carver. But I'd lived as Sophie for 25 years. I had a social security number, a driver's license, a college degree, a job, all under a false identity. Untangling that required lawyers, court orders, and more paperwork than I thought possible. You're not in trouble, Detective Chen assured me. You were a victim of identity theft, not a perpetrator. But legally, we need to restore your correct identity. So Sophie and Carver ceased to exist. She was declared a legal fiction, a ghost identity created by a criminal. In her place, Emma Rose Hoffman was resurrected, 30 years old, with a gap in her life history that could never fully be explained. I had to retake my driver's test. Reapply for my teaching license. Get a new social security card, a new passport. It was like being born again, but as an adult, with all the bureaucratic nightmares that entailed. Through it all, Elizabeth was there. My mom. I still stumbled over calling her that, but I was learning. She flew to Portland, helped me sort through the legal mess, held my hand during difficult meetings with lawyers and investigators. She met Maya, who hugged her for a full minute and said, "Thank you for not giving up." I would never give up on my daughter, Elizabeth said simply. Never. 3 months after that night on her porch, I put in my notice at school. I'd loved teaching, but Portland didn't feel like home anymore. It had never been home. It was just another temporary stop in a life built on lies. Are you sure? Maya asked, helping me pack up my apartment. You worked so hard to build this life. I built a life for Sophie. But I'm not Sophie. I need to figure out who Emma is. Emma can be a teacher too. Maybe. But first, Emma needs to know where she came from. Who her family is. What she missed. I moved to Asheville in June. Elizabeth helped me find an apartment, a small place near downtown, walking distance from her house. I got a job at a local bookstore, something simple and undemanding while I figured out my next steps. And slowly, gradually, I started to build a relationship with the mother I'd never known. It wasn't easy. We were strangers who shared DNA, two people who should have known each other intimately but instead had to learn each other from scratch. She had quirks I didn't understand, like how she always hummed when she cooked, or how she couldn't sleep without the sound of rain playing from her phone. I had habits that confused her, like how I needed to check locks 3 times before bed, a paranoia inherited from Dad's constant warnings about danger. But we tried. God, we tried so hard. She taught me about my grandparents, both deceased now. About the family I'd never known, aunts and uncles and cousins scattered across the South. About my own childhood, the baby I'd been before Thomas took me. She showed me videos from when I was 3, giggling in a bathtub, singing along to Barney. Photos of my first Halloween costume, a bumblebee. My first birthday party, chocolate cake smeared across my face. This is you, she'd say, pointing to a photo. This is who you were before he took you. You were so happy. So bright. So full of life. I studied those photos like they were artifacts from an ancient civilization. That little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, she was me, but she wasn't. She was Emma. The original Emma. The one who got stolen before she could grow up naturally. I grieved for her. For the life she should have had. For the mother and daughter who should have grown together instead of apart. But I also celebrated. Because against all odds, we'd found each other. We'd survived. 1 year after that first reunion on her porch, Elizabeth and I drove to Knoxville. To the place where it all began. The community center where Thomas had taken me was still there, though it looked smaller than I'd imagined. Just a regular building, nothing special, nothing that screamed this is where a tragedy started. We stood in the parking lot, holding hands, and Elizabeth pointed to a window on the 2nd floor. That's where the supervised visits happened. You'd play with toys while Margaret and Thomas watched. You were always so quiet during those visits, so subdued. I should have known something was wrong. I should have. Mom, I said, and it came out naturally now, no hesitation. You couldn't have known. He was planning it. He would have found a way no matter what. I know. Logically, I know. But the guilt never really goes away. We visited other places too. The house where we'd lived together before the divorce, now painted a different color, occupied by a different family. The park where Elizabeth used to take me to feed ducks. The hospital where I was born. You came 3 weeks early, she told me, standing outside the maternity ward. I was grocery shopping, and my water broke in the cereal aisle. Thomas panicked, drove so fast I thought we'd crash before we even got here. But then you arrived, and everything made sense. I held you, and I thought, this is why I exist. To be your mother. To protect you and love you and help you become whoever you're meant to be. You did protect me, I said. You searched for me for 25 years. You never gave up. That's protection, Mom. That's love. She pulled me into a hug, and we cried there on the sidewalk, 2 women mourning what was lost but celebrating what was found. The trial never happened. Thomas Carver died in his sleep 4 months after I confronted him at the care facility. A second stroke, massive and sudden. He never woke up. Part of me was relieved. I wouldn't have to testify, wouldn't have to face him in court, wouldn't have to relive the trauma for a jury. But part of me was angry. He'd escaped justice. He'd died without ever truly acknowledging what he'd done, without apologizing, without facing consequences. He lived with his consequences every day, Elizabeth said when I told her about his death. He gave up everything, his career, his family, his stability, to hide you. He lived in fear for 25 years, always looking over his shoulder. That was his prison. It's not enough. No. It's not. But it's what we got. And we can't let him take anything else from us, Emma. We can't let him steal our future the way he stole our past. She was right. So I let it go. Not forgave. I don't think I'll ever forgive what he did. But I released it. I chose to focus on what I had instead of what I'd lost. I'm 31 now. It's been over a year since I discovered the truth, since my world imploded and rebuilt itself into something new. I'm still figuring out who Emma Rose Hoffman is. Some days I feel like her, like the girl who should have grown up in North Carolina with her mother, who should have had a normal childhood and a normal adolescence. Other days I feel like Sophie, like the careful, controlled woman who learned to survive in a world of lies. Most days, I'm both. And that's okay. I'm back in school, working on my master's degree in education. Asheville has a program at UNC Asheville, and I'm thinking maybe I'll teach here, build a real life in the place where I was meant to grow up. Maya visits every few months, and we explore the city together, hiking in the mountains, eating at local restaurants, laughing about stupid things the way we always have. Mom and I have dinner together every Sunday. Sometimes we cook, sometimes we order in, but we always talk. Really talk. About everything and nothing. About the past and the future and the present. About who we are and who we want to be. We're building something new, not trying to recreate what was stolen. You can't go back. You can only go forward. I've met my extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins who knew about me, who'd searched for me, who'd kept my memory alive. They welcomed me with open arms, no questions asked, just love and acceptance. I have a cousin, Sarah, who's my age. We've become close, texting almost every day, planning a road trip for next summer. I joined one of Mom's support groups for families of missing children. I thought it would be too painful, but it's actually healing. Hearing other parents' stories, offering my perspective as someone who came back, it helps. Not everyone gets a reunion. Not every missing child comes home. But the parents still love, still hope, still search. There's something powerful in that. Sometimes I wonder about the little girl in those old photos. The original Emma, before Thomas took her. Would she recognize me now? Would she be proud of who I became, or disappointed by the compromises I made to survive? I'll never know. That Emma is gone, stolen by a man who thought love and possession were the same thing. But maybe that's okay. Maybe identity isn't about who you were meant to be. Maybe it's about who you choose to become, given the circumstances you're dealt. I chose to survive. I chose to thrive. I chose to find my way back, even when I didn't know I was lost. And now, finally, I'm home. Last week, Mom and I went through old boxes in her attic. She'd saved everything from my early childhood. Baby clothes, toys, drawings, report cards from preschool. There was a teddy bear I apparently couldn't sleep without, worn and faded but still soft. You called him Mr. Snuggles, she said, handing it to me. You took him everywhere. I held the bear, trying to remember. And maybe it was just my imagination, but I swear I could feel something, a whisper of memory, a ghost of recognition. This bear had been mine. I had loved him once. Can I keep him? Of course. He's yours. He's always been yours. That night, I put Mr. Snuggles on my bed. Hemingway sniffed him suspiciously but eventually accepted his presence. And I slept better than I had in months, holding on to a piece of the childhood that was stolen but not completely lost. I dream sometimes about that night, the night Thomas took me. In the dreams, I'm 5 years old, and I'm screaming for my mother, and no one comes. But then the dream shifts, and I'm 30, and I'm standing on a porch at 2 a.m., and my mother opens the door and pulls me into her arms and says, "My baby. My baby. You came back to me." And in the dream I finally feel safe. When I wake up, the feeling lingers. Because it's not just a dream anymore. It's real. I found my way back. After 25 years, I'm finally home. There's a moment that happened 3 weeks ago that I think about constantly. Mom and I were in her kitchen. Our Sunday dinner ritual, and she was teaching me how to make her grandmother's biscuits. Not from a recipe card or a cookbook, but from memory, from feel. "You add the buttermilk until it looks right," she said, demonstrating with hands that moved with practiced confidence. I was terrible at it. My dough was too wet, then too dry, then somehow both at once. She laughed, not at me, but with me, and covered my hands with hers, guiding them through the motion of kneading. "You used to help me make these," she said softly. "When you were 3. You'd stand on a chair next to me, covered in flour, so proud of yourself. You'd insist on doing it all by yourself even though you'd make the biggest mess." I stopped moving. "Do you remember what I said? When I made them?" She smiled, her eyes distant with memory. "You'd say, 'Look, Mama, I made clouds.' Because that's what the dough looked like to you. Little clouds." Something broke open in my chest. Not painfully, but like a door that had been locked for decades finally swinging free. I started crying, right there with my flour-covered hands, and Mom pulled me close, not caring that we were getting flour everywhere. "I don't remember that," I whispered. "I don't remember making clouds with you." "That's okay, baby. We'll make new memories. We'll make so many new memories that the old ones won't hurt as much." And we did. We made the biscuits together. Imperfect, lopsided, some burned on the edges, and we ate them warm with butter and honey, and they tasted like hope. Last month, I went back to visit Dad's grave. He's buried in a veterans cemetery outside Portland. He'd served in the Army in his 20s, before he met Mom, before I was born, before everything fell apart. I stood there looking at the simple headstone. Thomas James Carver. 1953 to 2025, beloved father. That last part made me angry. Beloved father. As if love was the defining characteristic of our relationship. As if the kidnapping and lies and stolen years could be summarized in 2 words carved into granite. But then I thought about what Elizabeth had said. He'd given up everything to keep me. His job, his stability, his life. In his twisted, broken mind, that was love. Possessive, destructive, suffocating love, but love nonetheless. I didn't cry at his grave. I didn't rage or scream or demand answers from a corpse that couldn't give them. I just stood there, letting myself feel the complicated mess of emotions that comes with grieving someone who hurt you. "I forgive you," I finally said. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to say it. "I forgive you for being broken. For not knowing how to love without destroying. For thinking you could build a life on lies." The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the cemetery, and I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Some doors need to be closed so others can open. I've started writing about my experience. Not for publication, at least not yet, but for myself. For the little girl who got stolen and the woman who found her way back. For all the Emmas who never came home. The therapist I've been seeing says it's healthy. Narrative gives us control over chaos, she explains. When you write your story, you're no longer just living it, you're shaping it, understanding it, making meaning from the senseless. So I write. About memory and identity. About the difference between the truth and the stories we tell ourselves. About how a single choice, a man deciding to drive away instead of returning his daughter, can splinter reality into infinite directions, creating parallel lives that should never have existed. I write about forgiveness and rage and the strange territory between them. I write about mothers who never stop searching and daughters who don't know they're lost. Mostly, I write about hope. Because if I learned anything from this nightmare, it's that hope isn't naive optimism or wishful thinking. Hope is defiance. Hope is saying I will keep going when everything tells you to give up. Hope is my mother submitting her DNA to databases for 25 years, against all logic, against all odds, believing that somehow, someday, I'd find my way back. And I did. Not the way either of us imagined. Not whole, not undamaged, not the fairy tale reunion where everything is instantly perfect. But I found my way back. And now, standing in the wreckage of what was and the possibility of what could be, I'm learning that sometimes the finding is just the beginning. The real work. The beautiful, terrifying, impossibly difficult work is learning how to stay. Learning how to build a life that's mine. Not Sophie's shadow. Not the ghost of the Emma who was stolen. But something new. Something real. Something worth the 25-year journey home. Mom called me yesterday morning. "Good morning, Emma," she said, like she does every day now. Just to hear my voice. Just to confirm I'm real. "Good morning, Mom," I replied. And in those simple words, that ordinary greeting, lives an extraordinary truth. I was kidnapped by my own father at 5. I found my real mother at 30. And somehow, against all odds, I found myself too.